Chef, ready?
I wonder because I heard Robert say he was
Choose your own restaurant.
I don't. Do you guys mind if we wait 5 minutes to start? Mind?
How about this? We're going to start in 5 minutes.
I know, but I just have never.
Oh, it's
Susie, Gabby told me she used to hate wrestling too, and now she just loves it.
Basketball's so exciting. Wrestling's like, man. And you sit there all day, and then your kid wrestles for 2 minutes, and then we're done.
She was telling me this weekend, she's like, I used to hate it. Like, I was like, used to try to convince Aiden to play basketball.
It's been like that.
Yeah.
And Aiden's really tall.
Yeah. And she's like, and now I like it. She's like, I'm glad he wrestled.
He's a nice boy.
He is. Oh,
When we leave town, we always have to He's a 7th grader.
yeah. 7.
But I didn't want to
Nice.
I will say, some of the best kids in the school wrestle in that middle school. Like I've coached teams in the past, like my little brother was on it. It was pretty shitty teams.
Yeah, but you start with the kids and build that camaraderie.
Yeah. But this group, they're just it's funny. We go anywhere and I don't worry the same way.
My grandson's never wrestled
Yeah.
until she's worried about some where he wrestles once and he's out or something.
Oh yeah.
So she's not sure he's good. Is that how the tournament here is?
They'll get put in a pot of like 5 and they'll wrestle everybody. Where does he wrestle? Who does he wrestle for? Caldwell?
He's a Valley.
Valley?
Well, they didn't sound happy on the first game. I mean, not on our
You need to get out there eating in miles. I asked him, how'd you do in your report card? Did you get all the A's? He goes, all good math. I said, where's your math? I see. He goes, but I said my miles and all we do is talk. I said, well, duh, move.
Adrian very much. 31. Shane, I just learned about it.
I know, for my nephew.
But having the budget.
Gabby,
Yeah.
Chris. He's a nice boy.
Yeah, he is.
What's your son's name?
And Grayson is in class.
Oh.
My kindergarten.
He's really shy.
Adrian has 3. Yeah, he says he's not very He probably has.
Even though we're still eating, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. You all should have an agenda. Board members, would you like to look at the agenda? And would someone like to make a motion to adopt the agenda?
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second that.
All in favor? Motion has been carried. We're going to get into the business. So first is the district calendar. I think the first thing that we need to do is have the committee, the people that were have had several meetings and then gone over the surveys, present to us what they have done. Is that okay?
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yes.
So Ryan and I are in charge of giving a little bit of the background of our calendar committee. So as you are probably aware, this committee was formed because the board asked for this committee. So everyone was invited on campus to join this committee. It went out to absolutely everyone. Anyone that replied was welcome to join. No one was turned away. So just so you know, we have lots of different people on this committee, from certified staff to confidential staff and administrators. And a number of us staff members on the committee play dual roles. Like, I'm a confidential employee, but I'm also a parent. So that was helpful as well. And then I just wanted to let you guys know, so I counted it up, everyone on the committee, adding it all up, we have a total of over 106.5 years of experience at the Nyssa School District. So it's a variety. And from that, our longest serving person on the committee that has worked for the district was 27 years. And then we have someone on the committee that has worked for the district for 6 months. So a lot of variety. We've met over a dozen times in person as a committee, and my last count, we have emailed each other 92 times on these projects.
Is that all? It was 100 something.
Probably.
Yeah.
I did count that last week. So with that, that's kind of the background. So it's not just we've met once and it was a committee selected by Darren, not at all.
Perfect. And so what I handed out to you guys is kind of the structure which we operated. And so today, kind of in our presentation, is going to be set up with, we're going to do the background and kind of lay the foundation of the group and the work. Then we're going to present the 6 calendar options to you guys. Then bring in the data based on surveys of staff and those things and parents, and give that to you. Then we'll have a little bit of the research as well on 4 versus 5-day calendars. And then the recommendation of our certified and classified unions as well. And so that's kind of the structure we're going to move through to give you guys, our job is to give you as much information as possible. So as you can kind of see, and I think most of you have seen this before, the structure which we operate. We are over here, we're the options team. And we made it very clear, right? We don't make the decision. Our job is to come up with the options and get this stakeholder voice and bring that to you. You guys are the choice-making body, right? And when we say at any time, the choice-making body can actually go back and say, option team, we don't like this, go back. But we absolutely understand as our job is to collect those things and bring it to you because you guys do make the ultimate choice. And so that's kind of the structure we did with your options. We listen to stakeholders, and now we're at the arrow here, bringing the data to you guys. So just so you know, that's how we operated. So, anybody have any questions on that? A little bit of history before we get into it. As Crystal was saying, our first meetings were back in October. Right? We actually met every Wednesday until I think December. We missed a couple because of Christmas. And just kind of refining our process. And we put out our first survey to the parent-teacher conferences, got that survey back and heard some parents, and then we as a committee sat there and said, whoa, the wording was wrong. We need to actually rework this. And then so what we did was we brought the 6 options as saying, here's a 4-day, and what we did was we wrote kind of what each one of them does. And as a committee, we really talked about that, about the education, how do we really educate everybody on every little aspect. But what we really came down to, which would be literally impossible, is we needed people to look at those calendars and make a decision based on their own experiences. So if I'm looking at it as a family, that's the lens of which I'm looking towards the calendars and giving them those options. And we got some feedback saying, oh, there's so many and it's so small, but we wanted to give you as much of that as possible. And so as a committee, we kind of wanted to balance those two things, right? And not limit those and just say, please use the lens of which, if you're a teacher, if you're an IA, use the lens of which you're going to be using this calendar. And so that's, as you kind of see the data and everything tonight, that's kind of the process we went through. Unfortunately, 2 weeks ago at the basketball game, we tried to do this big push to get some more parents. The wrong calendar was put up. That was the previous one, and it wasn't the updated one. So I know we had some parents, which I totally agree with, and I brought that to the calendar committee. And so there are 33 results on there. They're actually kind of the old format and data. And then we also brought it to a migrant committee as well and asked them to fill it out. And so, so I do apologize on that. I know some of you got to see some emails that were in there. So anyway, hopefully that sets the groundwork for today. And so here we go. Any questions about that?
Did you get many responses from our Hispanic patrons?
So as far, I mean, it's we don't ask like ethnic and those kind of things, but we do have Spanish only. We had, oh gosh, I want to say almost 40 responses, 37 or something like that responses. But that's just in Spanish, and I don't know how many English because we didn't ask that in general. So yeah, good question. Perfect. Thank you. Yep. Okay.
USB. All right.
So we're going to present to you guys the 6 options of a graph of the survey options, what they chose, as well as all of the feedback. So everybody who chose, it'll have their option on there, and if they made a comment, there'll be a comment as well. They should be organized, administration, classified, certified, parents, community members, they're all together, and they're also in the order of, option 1, option 2, option 3, so you can view those and compare them to the calendar. So Cindy's going to talk about the 5 days.
So basically we presented, and actually how we came to this, options was basically during one of our meetings, our calendar committee meetings, we were divided into 2 groups. One group would put together some calendars for 4-day weeks, and one group would put together some calendar options for a 5-day week. And so the first 3 calendars that you see are 5-day week options. One of them, the first one is, let me see, I think the third one is going to be similar. So the third option is going to be similar to the current calendar now, where we kind of have a little bit of a mix of, there are certain Fridays off or Mondays off for holidays and stuff. And so it's a little bit of a mix of a 4/5-day week. But then the first two options are having, one of the options that we talked about was possibly having parents maybe would enjoy or would rather have a longer Thanksgiving break versus just the 3 days. There was some feedback in the discussions that said, the 2 days that we go to school for Thanksgiving week is kind of a waste of time. And so we thought, well, maybe that would be a better option to go a full week off for Thanksgiving. So we have like a Thanksgiving break and then a spring break, and then we have our 2-week Christmas break. And then the second one is, it was very similar to it. There was just a couple of extra school days. I'm trying to think of, I think it had a couple extra teacher work days, I think, during the month. And then, versus one teacher work day or in-service day versus 2 in-service days. And then the third one is going to be similar to what the current calendar is.
And when I did the 4 days, when we as a committee did that, kind of just took from what's already been out there. What Bill and Adrian's done the other 4 days with tutorial Fridays. And then there's a couple of schools that have absolutely no Fridays at all. So we threw that option out there just to see, if anyone would be interested in doing it that way, but knowing really the tutorial is pretty still important for kids' education that are needing that. So they very much resemble the local schools that are around us, and they would be in sync with them. So it wouldn't be too much different than what's already going on around us. But again, we would start the same. We'd go a half hour longer each day, which again is similar to the other calendars that the other schools have. The Christmas break didn't look like it changed. Our conferences would still stay where they were. Get a day off or 2 days off because you'd always have that Friday off. So you get the total of 3. So the 4-day or the option 4 and the option 6, somehow they got in there in sync. 4 and 6 are similar to Belle and Adrian's, and then number 5 is that no Fridays at all. No.
What's the difference between 4 and 6 other than
there?
1 day?
It was one of them. It was, I think
It looks like maybe 2 tutorial Fridays.
Yeah.
Versus 1.
Right.
I don't know.
I guess the question would be
There wasn't a
why
lot.
present 2 options when they're so very similar?
Well, and that's after we put that out there. We thought, well, we should have just, maybe made it 4 instead of 6 options, but we had the calendars and so we presented them that way.
Okay.
So there's not a whole lot. Like again, I said I limit the 2 schools that were close to us and no Friday as well, which we just thought
It looks like
there.
So it looks like the Christmas break is a full 2 weeks versus not a full 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's what it was.
On that 6th calendar.
Yeah.
Number 6 has only just shorter
Christmas break by a couple days, 3 days or something.
Yeah.
And then what did you think were the differences between 1 and 3? Those were also very similar.
Yes.
1 and 2. Well,
Was it 1 and 2?
1 and 2, 1 and 3. So calendar.
Oh, 1 and 2 and then.
Yeah, I was like 1 and 2 is going to be the ones, and I think it's trying to think of what those differences were. It looks like there's only usually one tutorial or one teacher workday on the calendar 1, and then there are most of the months are 2 teacher workdays.
So if you look down at the bottom, it says there's 21 full days on option 1, 22 Friday full days.
Yeah.
And then there's the other difference was teacher workdays was 9 on option 2 and teacher workdays was option 10. And I think when we did this, it wasn't like this would be exactly what the calendar was, but something similar to it. Just obviously the union and all that has a role in how this is all going to plan out, but just what did the community think that they thought would be best fitting, or the staff, and then fine tuning it obviously is going to be.
So which one is the closest to the calendar that we have now?
Option 3. And honestly, when we were looking through the different ones, if you look, even this month right now, there's only 1 week that's a full 5-day, and so, that was one of the things that we were talking about is like when you look at the current calendar, there's actually quite a few weeks that are Fridays off or Monday off for a holiday and stuff. So there's actually quite a few 4-day-a-week, options or months, I guess, weeks that in the current calendar. And so that was one of the things we wanted to give that as an option, is similar to what we're already doing, because it's really not too much from the 4-day week.
So it'll work, you guys. Do you guys feel like the people that did participate in the survey understood
There was
the
a
calendars? Because I got a lot of emails of people that said, "Oh, I had to fill it out like 2 times because I didn't see something the first time that I saw the second time." And
well, and maybe they just, I don't know. There was a description on each calendar that when we sent it out the second time we actually did the survey, there was a description on each calendar about what the differences are.
They look just like this, and they were labeled just like that.
Yeah,
like
and
day 1 week Thanksgiving, 160 days,
With
and then they were able to see all of it.
I think a lot of the people, it came down to reading the fine print at the bottom, like what time they got out of school and stuff like that they didn't maybe notice the first time. And then Ryan, you said you changed the survey.
So the first survey went out to the parents or the parent-teacher conferences was more of, what your family needed. So we didn't actually give them the visual options.
Right.
And so it was more based on that. And so that's why we took that back. And so the data you see today doesn't have that reflected because there was a lot of confusion. I do think some questions in there we could have worded better. And so what we decided is to put this one out and kind of do a clean slate. And so yeah. So that's why we did the second survey.
This one was all calendars. The other one was like,
Just questions.
do you feel like you can feed your kids, or do you feel like 5 days is going to be more important to you than? But we didn't want to say 5-4. We didn't want to confuse them.
Yeah.
So it was more of a questionnaire.
Yes, yeah. And I realized we weren't getting.
And we didn't get a lot of feedback on that one, honestly. I felt like, I don't know that, I didn't know that it was actually at the middle school, because when I went to parent-teacher conferences, I didn't go into the library. I had no need to go into the library. That's where the survey was in the library. Whereas during my early Head Start parent-teacher conferences, we actually took a computer to each family and asked them to fill it out. So every one of my early Head Start families, because it does affect my early Head Start families as well, I made sure that every one of them filled it out so that their voice was also heard. But I don't feel like a lot of people knew about the Wondering Parent-Teacher Conferences, which was, it's a busy time. So I think that's why we decided to go with this calendars here, look and see what you guys would, what's better fitting for your families. So, yes.
And to add to what you're saying, at the elementary school, the computers were actually closed.
Yeah.
So, I don't know who did it.
I didn't even see them at the elementary school as well.
Did you have a question, Bill?
No, I was just saying, I think with that first survey, a lot of things that did come up were some of the questions that we tried to answer on the calendar, right?
Yes,
Like
correct.
this when you refer to that fine print. So those were some questions asked.
Right.
Like, what is
Yeah.
this? How does this impact?
Yeah.
So we tried to add that to the calendars, but trying to fit everything in there. I mean,
Yeah, it's really, yeah.
I think picture, really what it comes down to is, what does this work for your family? 5, 4, Fridays, a Friday, tutorial Fridays, like what works for your family without asking 100 other questions involved in it, so.
I'm glad to hear that the original questionnaire wasn't included necessarily in the numbers for this. One of my biggest concerns was that the same people would be taking all 3, the one at the basketball game, this one, and the first one, and then skewing the results because they were, the same 30 people were doing the same responses.
And when I put all of the questions together, I kind of looked through to see if there was
Can you see?
Duplicated yeah.
Oh, okay.
And I did omit like the second one that they did.
Oh,
So,
okay.
and there was only a few. There
Okay.
was only a few, and I don't know if they just didn't know they couldn't fill it out again or what that it was. But I saw a couple different emails. Saw some emails that were the same. So I just took their second one out and went with their first one. And
That's fantastic.
So what if they took it the second time though because they didn't understand it the first time?
I only deleted like 3.
Yeah.
So that's what I figured. It wasn't enough to make, I don't think, a huge difference, because if you look at the graph, you can tell what they were asking for or wanting, so. But yeah, that first one has nothing to do with any of this.
Okay.
This is just the calendars.
That's great.
I did find reading through all of this stuff very confusing. And it was difficult to get my bearings straight as to where you're extending hours. And how many tutorial Fridays there were, how many full Fridays, how many no Fridays, So I did find that confusing, and I figured if I found it confusing, there were a lot of other people who found it confusing. So, but when I saw that there was the one with the full week for Thanksgiving, that one surprised me. So, and I will ask you a question. On the weeks that we have Monday holidays, on the 4-day week, are we just doing 3 days?
Some of them are just a 3-day week. Some of them are, and I don't know, I'd have to look back over and look at all the details on them, but they're,
Yeah, so like January 2024, it's got the first week and the third week are both 3-day weeks.
like on September 4th is a holiday, they go on that Friday. But there's only a few Fridays that they're going to school on. January 15th, they go to school on the 19th, on that Friday. And that's one of them. Yeah. We just tried to get what we could to everybody the best we could, and as many people as we could in many different fashions that we could, other than going door to door and handing it to everybody. Guess we could have paid the mail people to do that. So, do you have any other questions?
How did you feel about the results that you got? I mean, all the work you did, because you have some feelings about it.
Yeah.
How did you feel about it?
I was surprised. I was surprised at the results because I work with lower income families, and I know that most of them either are two parent working or a single parent working full time, and so I was surprised that there were more of the families that I work specifically with that wanted the 4-day week. And I was even speaking to a family, one of my past parents in the hallway, and she said, if I have to be at work on Friday and there's no school on Friday, I don't have a way to pay for childcare. I've got 4 little kids. There's no way for me. So I was surprised that there weren't more people that were selecting the 5-day option based on that. But again, I work with a different group of people than some of the community members are. So it's just only one small portion.
But it's an important
It is.
portion.
It is. It is. And so that's my big worry is my low income families.
So Cindy, you're saying that your family specifically have asked for the 5-day for the.
But again, I have 22 kids in my program, so.
I was also surprised that so many would opt for a 4-day week because of the meals that you get on Fridays.
I think that this community all around us has gone to the 4-day, and it is what majority has found normal now. I mean, honestly, if you look all the schools now, I mean, these are just adopted it. I think it's just one of those things now that the community sees it. The students are seeing, like, you know, I mean, for instance, we had a play practice, and they're like, well, we're gonna have practice on Friday because nobody has school, and then they put Nyssa on that day, and I was like, well, we're not gonna make it to practice because we have school, you know? So it's kind of been an adopted around the whole community in, you know, I mean, Ontario does every other Friday. That Fridays just are not school, you know? So I'm not surprised by it. I think people are waiting for that to be the option because it's standard around here now.
Did you get comments on lengthening the day, especially for the elementary school kids?
Yep. I think
Thank
I think that there's comment. I mean, the comments are included in these things, and
They're all in there.
I did see some parents that said, "That's such a long day for my kindergarten."
It is.
But I also know from my experience of having my kids in kindergarten, if they fall asleep, they don't wake them up because they know they're tired. You know, and those who are riding the bus, they fall asleep on the bus, and that's okay. You know, they know that it's a long day.
What are your own feelings about lengthening the day for the little ones, the elementary school kids?
To me, it's a half hour longer and then a whole day off. So I have a child who's has an IEP and she's dyslexic, and we struggle every night, and she is exhausted on Thursday because it takes her 3 times longer to do anything than it does some of the other kids. And she's in special needs and special ed, and she comes home and we can only do 3 words at a time, and we can only read a first grade passage when she's in second. And by Thursday, she's done. She's done. And Friday she's exhausted. And to take a spelling test on Friday doesn't do her any good because what we learned Thursday night or Wednesday, she don't remember it on Friday because she is tired and she is done. Same with my middle schooler. She does better. She's better. She doesn't struggle as much, but I'm tired. I get tired because every night I'm working an hour with a second grader to read 3 passages and 3 words, right? So to me, having a Friday off is really a relief because Thursday night we just got to get through school and we can breathe. But that's my personal, right? But that's not everybody. And everybody can have their story that tells them what fits them, and that's why we said what fits you as a parent or as an instructor, what fits your family. And that's what we were hoping people would say, this works best for me. So, I mean, both are very important, right? What she's talking about her family, what I'm talking about her students, and I'm talking about my family. But at the end of the day, it's up to, you guys to decide what matters the most for our community and what's going to be the best for our students.
Do you have information from the teachers union president?
I just have a vote count on as to what they would prefer.
And what they prefer?
So basically the results I have teachers requesting a 4-day versus 5. And really, like, going into the surveys and going really deep into this, like, ultimately what I decided what I was going to survey is it really comes down to whether we're asking, do we want a 4-day or 5-day, right? And then just because there's so much that has to be considered when this decision's made, and then we have to start knocking down those barriers to help right? If it's decided to be a 4-day, then we have to start looking at lengthening the day, right? Which I'm totally not for, personally, right? I'd rather extend the school year. But anyway, 29 to 5 of the teachers that voted, right? So that's what, 34 teachers out of our 40 plus members that voted. And so.
Do we have anything from the classified?
Yeah, the classified and what they did, they gave their members 3 options: a 4-day tutorial, and a 5-day. And so theirs was a 4-day with tutorial as long as there's not a loss in pay. And when we say that, right, is that if Friday tutorial and there's no bus driver, you don't have the same cafeteria, right? I mean, and if there's a loss of pay, then they would go 5. But they like the 4-day with the tutorial only if there's no loss in pay. And they had 39 votes on it. 4-day there's 14. The 4-day tutorial is 15, and 5-day there were 10. And so, but their 4-day with tutorial if there's no loss of pay is what they recommend.
So that would be like option 1 or 4 or 6.
How come there isn't an option on there for an extended year? Because I'm kind of like Bobby on this. If we're going to a 4-day rather than going till 350, because that pushes everything back, right? Sports and everything. I mean, I had a wrestler that didn't come home till 8 or 8:30 at night anyway. And
If they have to wait till after tutorial or
yeah,
nighttime.
so why don't we have an option? How many days would we have to extend it rather than extend it 50 minutes at the end of the day?
And I think that we had a lot of great discussions, and that's the best way to say it. One of it was looking at being competitive in the job market in the area, right? And then so really our teachers already go more days, and now we're going to go longer. And so looking at recruiting and hiring and those things. And so that's what we talked about that, right? Is it, if this was kind of one of those, I don't know, I guess, not a fix, I guess would be a good word for it, but a way to say, look, we're being competitive, we have kind of the same calendar, the same pay, and then, but by extending it out, it just basically takes all that away. And so why would you go for it? And so anyway, so that like I said, we had a lot of conversation about that, and it just kind of really just stopped and say, how do we get really just kind of square to what we are around us?
How does this impact the education of our children?
Perfect segue.
Great.
Yay!
Yeah.
So,
She did all the work. I was part of it. Pretty well.
That's right.
So I have homework for you. No, I have a couple of articles that talk about the 4-day versus 5-day, and then I summarize some of the findings. I had originally put pros and cons, but then it could be pros and cons for however you're feeling. So I just basically changed it to findings on there, and I'll give you this one as soon as I'm done. So basically, the first article is done by an Oregon professor from the Department of Economics with Oregon State University, and he's specifically looking at Oregon schools. So that one really is a really good source. That information in there, I quoted some of the things that were that I thought were really interesting findings, and then I also put their page numbers on there for you so that you can just look those up real quickly. Some of the things they talked about were that it may reduce absences because it gives that extra day for appointments and travel to athletic events. Many teachers, again, like we said, find that 4-day-a-week appealing, and so it kind of ups our teacher pool. The cost savings could be between 0.4% to 2.5%, depending on what you're looking at there. They said the average cost savings in Oregon was approximately $350 to $700 per student. Studies show a decrease in math and reading scores due to less instructional hours. So obviously they're not getting the same time as students that go 5 days a week, and that's why they would have that loss there. Weekend learning loss, which is just having that 3-day a week instead of, 3-day weekend can also increase that learning loss sometimes, and that really seemed to affect our low income and ELL students. Then it's just really important, like they said in there, that teachers utilize that longer day if we have a longer day effectively, or modify coursework to align with the new composition. So if we only have 4 days a week, we're going to have to talk about modifying the coursework and how things are presented to make sure that students are getting the full instruction that they need. And then loss of access to food services. I know that was something that was mentioned, so that could increase food insecurity. Sometimes children on those off days are unsupervised, and so that can increase some of those risky behaviors or unproductive behaviors. And then again, talks about the achievement losses, but everything is quoted on there. The next one was an article that I got from Education Week. I went through some others that I found online, and they were all kind of similar, just the same kinds of things. Basically, you're going to see a little bit of a decrease in your achievement when you lose a whole day of instruction. And so the biggest thing was the cost effectiveness, but then what does that cost effectiveness really mean when we are losing food services on those days, and sometimes our paraprofessionals and those kinds of things. So just, we have to look at what we feel are positives and negatives to our school district and community. And then there was another thing that Crystal gave me that talked about the SNAP, which is the emergency allotments. And so after next month, the families receiving SNAP benefits will no longer receive the extra emergency allotments that were due to COVID. So this will decrease the SNAP benefits. And of course, then with the rise of food prices, it's going to impact our families. So just one more thing to think about as we make this decision. Is that for you? So articles are there for you to read, and then summary points for you.
I think one note on the SNAP thing is that it's just reducing them back to where they were before COVID. It's not reducing any lower than that. But yes, it is a reduction based off what they are now accustomed to.
As long as I don't need eggs.
Right.
I will say that I worked a 4-day week, 10-hour day, almost all my career. It takes a while to get used to, but it can be done. And I will have to admit that my kids adapted to it very easily. In large part because Noble's a very good disciplinarian. But it can be done. I also use Fridays as I came into school and I worked on those days here. But it takes a lot from a parent to make sure that their kids are going to stay up with what they've learned on those 4 days. Because in 3 days you can lose a lot. And that's one of my big concerns, is that, I will tell you, I'm an advocate of a 4-day week, but my big concern is the kids will lose too much. And I think that means that teachers are going to have to reorganize the way they teach, and parents are going to have to do some reorganization too.
And if I might add too, there's a great number of parents in the community that work more than 12 hours a day.
Yes.
And so when we're expecting them to work harder with their kids, it's all they can do sometimes to get home and get dinner. I have not even been home today.
Mm-hmm.
My kids are in the hallway because I have no transportation for them to get home. And I know I'm just one small case, but I'm saying there are more than one person.
There, Cindy.
Cars out there. They told them to go out in the car. But I'm just saying, in cases like this, I live out in the country. It's not easy. My husband's working tonight, all night, 12 hours tonight. There's a lot of families in our community that work full time.
Well, and what about babysitting for the littles? I don't think there's.
And that was another one of my big concerns, but it was just
there is no babysitting, and
no.
as a teacher, when I worked all those years, those little kids, there's no babysitting, they're home alone, and there's nobody to cook for them. They were eating raw top ramen because they don't cook.
Well, but if the older kids have school off too, wouldn't they have older brothers and sisters or
Some
a
of them
neighbor
don't,
kid or
some of them
something?
don't.
Well, I'll just give you an example. This is just me thinking about how this worked in my family. Both my parents worked, and my mom worked in the shed at the time when my brother was probably 6th grade, probably old enough to watch us. But I just thought of this. My mom used to come from Payette from the shed, pick us up, drive us back to Payette, and we'd sit in the van until 5:30, right? So I mean that's basically if we don't have childcare. That's no longer appropriate, right? To us, that was that was normal, right? We used to
But
sit-
even if there was babysitting in town, which there isn't, who could, I mean, not a lot of parents can afford it, it's not cheap.
But surprisingly, on the first survey that we did, that was one of the questions, was whether childcare was a challenge. And a big number said no. I was blown away at that.
Because there really is.
I don't know if they understood the question.
There may not be any competition for it now, but as soon as everybody doesn't have school on Friday, right? Now you
Well,
just have
maybe it's
influx
one of those
need.
CTOs or whatever, that for we get some high school kids to open up a room at the elementary and babysit some of them.
I mean, we've thrown out so many ideas. We talked about enrichment on Fridays, not to like there's
That's true.
right.
I liked the tutorial because the kids who wanted to come came, and the kids who didn't want to come stayed home. And they got breakfast and they got lunch and they got.
Was that helpful to you as a teacher to
Yeah,
have
because I would
opportunity to
call
work
4
with
kids
small
in
groups?
who were struggling with fractions, and if I worked with 4 kids, I could get a lot done.
Strong on either
I
side.
have a comment, but Chris will go first if
Well,
that's
it's
okay.
off topic what you're talking about, so keep going.
Oh.
I want to switch gears.
Okay, go ahead.
I would like a board member to ask Gina about just some food service numbers, because I think, just because I'm a numbers person, I'm trying to be very neutral about this, because I have my own opinion, but
I
I
was gonna
think
ask you,
the-
but I guess if you're gonna deflect.
I'm
it,
deflecting to Gina because she
then-
has it all written
Are you
out.
talking about how much money our district?
Well, let me just
proposes?
make this statement. I'm really grateful Crystal is a numbers person.
Okay,
She's a
Gina,
numbers person.
I
give it to us.
Yes.
How much money are we gonna lose?
Oh, yeah, I did it for everybody. Because I was having a hard time when I was figuring out the numbers of just loss in revenue.
But not only in revenue, what does it do to the employees?
That's the other problem is because all of my staff, you're looking at them not having.
Right.
Taking a fifth of their
Taking
salary.
a fifth of their salary, talking $450 a month, that's gonna be taken out. So I was just figuring up, cost-wise, what we're going to be losing if we were to do a straight 4-day. And it's like $185,000 for our program, less than what we normally make. And so that's something that when I'm looking at food costs that increased almost, I've had most of my stuff is increasing at 36%. And knowing that my staff is you're talking about them losing $450 a month in their pay.
Do you think they would go find another job somewhere
That's
else?
what I'm looking at. I'm looking at losing really good people that do a really good job.
How much would it classify?
The same.
There's part of it that if the district and the board make a commitment that that's not gonna happen, then it doesn't happen,
What do you mean,
right?
like-
So saying that, food service is a good example. We're gonna need some of them, obviously, but maybe the other half are offered IA work to work with those tutorial kids coming in, if they wanna do it or not,
Yeah.
or if they wanna take up, so I mean, they're saying that, because like I said, that's a classified, said as long as we don't lose any money, we'll do that. And so if the board says, this is the option what we're gonna do, that's why I gave you this one. Our job is to implementation, saying, okay, this is what we have to do. We have to have them come in on Fridays because you guys made a commitment, because the cost savings that Gina talked about, and that is on the back of our classified. That's not our teachers, that's not, that is 100% our classified. And so if we say, no, that's not gonna happen, it's our job to figure out how to do that. Again, have them come in.
Can we
for
still
support.
serve meals like we did in the summer?
If they are not scheduled school days, no food can be served whatsoever. All
If they're not-
COVID serving is complete, there's no more of that, they've ended all that. So if we don't have a school day, it is not a day we can serve food, unless you're doing a tutorial and in previous years, back when I was here years ago, when we did tutorials, we were only getting about 245 kids for the entire district.
Out of 1,200.
So, yeah, and so you're talking maybe 2 of my staff working. And so like with Ontario, their contracts, when I talked to their food service director, their contracts are for that they are not allowed to reduce any hours in their schedule. So they have to take on all of that as a no reimbursement. Because if we're not serving meals, we're not getting reimbursed. So if there is not a meal being served and they're gonna have to be assigned to work somewhere else. And I don't know how comfortable a lot of our staff are going to be doing that. And then even the overload of saying, okay, how many custodians can you have? I mean, I've got 9 employees. And so if it was that we were not going to let them lose money and then it was going to be my department that was going to have to pay that amount, that's $60,000 that's no reimbursement just for the year.
Well, on
Because
that,
I have no money to, unless we're serving a meal, to get reimbursed to pay that staff.
and what you're saying negates the argument that we're saving money.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, you're not really doing it from, 0.4 to 2.5%. You're not doing it to save money. You're saying this is
Yeah, you're not
what's
saving
best
money.
for kids in our community. And so it is not a fiscal thing. And
So Gina, if it's a tutorial Friday, then perhaps you might be able to serve meals and be reimbursed.
Yeah, and so like, we used to have like right around 200 kids for elementary, and then there was only like maybe 15 to 20, I think, at middle school, and then like maybe 7 to 8 for high school. And so we never exceeded that, like 245, that was our average, because I go back and I pulled all of my stuff to look and see what we were averaging. And so you're looking at, the state says we should only have, for every 100 kids, 1 employee. So if you're gonna have 245, then out of my 9, who do I decide works today, or do I just pay those wages and don't get the reimbursement for it?
Well, at the elementary, we had to invite at least 4 to 5 people. So how is there only 15 kids at the whole high school or middle school? Don't they have to? We had to invite kids who were, like if I was going to do math that week, I would invite kids who were struggling with math. I'm sure there's kids at the middle school who were struggling. Why were they only having 15 kids come?
it could be the only 15 got served a meal, maybe. Not saying that could have been 30 or 40. I mean, I don't know.
Well, I was in school when that was the thing, and it was invitation only, and if you didn't want to come, you didn't come. So the teacher may have invited 5 kids, but I didn't have to be there. So
There was no penalty for not.
there was no,
Well,
it was just whenever you wanted, if you wanted. So
if it was mandatory, you know,
it was mandatory, but I mean,
yeah.
there was hardly anybody though it was made mandatory.
Yeah.
I would think that anybody who was failing or not doing well in a certain subject should have to come.
But how do they compel them to
But those are the kids that can't get there.
Right. Yeah.
Those
Well,
are kids who don't come well or aren't studying.
do buses run on tutorial?
We didn't before.
Buses, yeah, we do.
No, we didn't before.
No,
Did before, but that's something that we.
Because kids would walk from the east side of town and they were supposed to be here at 9 and they'd straggle in at 9:30 or quarter, just whatever they got up and came.
If we ran buses, that would solve our bus driver problem.
It would. Not so much the food service problem.
Well,
Yeah. So here, but as you can see, kind of the whole committee did a really really good job of not saying what we really wanted. I mean, we drove that in there, but our job was to give you the options, to give you the research, to give you all those things. And I do think there are a lot of those, well, what about this, what about this? And that's why we just have to look at the survey. And because, honestly, looking at it, is how are parents going to do this? This, especially in our community. I look at this survey, and it's pretty overwhelming that that's what most options are, option 5. And so, but our job is to give you the data.
So,
And you guys need to take that in and make that decision. But we could go, this is what our calendar committee meetings were like, to be honest with you. It's just going back and forth on it. And what we have to say is, this is what the data says. And we have over 300 something,
300 respondents.
yeah, over 300 respondents of the survey. And so, a good sample, not a lot, but I think a good example. So, anyway, so our job is to present this to you guys.
Do you have seat time numbers for these calendars?
So, and that's our job, right? When we refine that, is we have to think, okay, now how does that work seat time wise? how does that look with this? And so that's when we refined. If you guys, as I said, we want 4 days with tutorial, our job now is to make that happen. Work with certified, work with classified, and make that come kind of to fruition. And so that's where the implementation refinement process comes in at, because we have to get those seat hours, right? And
990.
yeah, 990, and right now we're at 120 something. Do you remember, Bobby?
11,
Or 11 something. So anyway, but yeah, so that all of those things, those little nuances that you can't really account for there. Well, contract says that a teacher get a day here. I mean, we have to refine it, but it is really the basic structure which we need to operate. That you guys have the data now and the research on it, and then you have to make that decision. So
When do we have to have a decision?
It's board. I mean, honestly, people want to know what next year looks like for planning purposes. So hopefully we can make it at the next board meeting in February. But if we make it in March, then so be it. We're still thinking.
Just don't worry, I'm working on a budget.
Other things
Yes,
start
Mr.
appearing out.
De Leon.
The one thing I wanted to mention before we moved on, no, it's fine, actually, I wrote it down, so.
Okay.
Was part of the conversation, at least when looking at the 4 day, I give you my personal opinion, I like 5, right? But when we're looking at trying to hire teachers, and I know I've been doing some recruiting, right? Every time I see somebody, I'm like, hey, come work for Nyssa. Oh, you're a wrestling coach? Even more, come work for Nyssa, right? And the 4 days attractive for hiring. So that's one of the things that in terms of being competitive, right? That was kind of Ryan even mentioned. And I think that's something that we have to consider.
Is there a possibility of if we did a tutorial, only the teachers or a couple teachers per grade level could do it and get paid extra, or? I'm just saying.
I mean,
That's all
with money, anything's possible.
It's all negotiated.
Because some teachers might not want to, but some teachers might say, hey, I want to make some extra money.
I think those are things we've mentioned.
Yeah.
In
So,
the calendar.
actually something we talked about was, we could have those tutorial Fridays, not just for catching up, for getting students, to bring up their grades, but we could offer some enrichment activities.
Right.
And so, what if a teacher wanted to have, a special class that they did on Fridays, or an activity, we could offer some things that draw in kids that need something, but
Well, like
don't
clubs,
necessarily need
like
to
STEM
get them.
programs and things like that.
Well,
Yeah.
cooking, guitars, we did the things that we did for log on. We have guitars, knitting,
Yeah.
but teaching kids to cook, elementary kids need to learn how to.
So we've thrown those ideas around at the table with
Yeah.
everybody here about.
Have some, or even if it's 3 hours, they could go to an hour of math tutorial and then get to choose a enrichment.
Yeah, we talked about that too, whether it was a half day on Friday or a full day
We used to do it from
tutorial.
9 to 12.
And then when you're done catching up, you get to go to the enrichment and the fun at that point.
Because we had our staff meetings from 8 to 9 and then tutorial from 9 to 12. And then,
But that becomes a scheduling thing, and scheduling is up to
right.
them.
But if they could go for an hour or so and get caught up or work on their math or whatever, and then, yes, sir.
I had a discussion, so when I go to the superintendent's meetings, the superintendents from all the districts in Malheur County are there. Actually, we have Huntington, which is Baker County, but he's closer to us, so he comes. And there's only 2 of us, and I'm not even counting across the river. Now, save the Boise schools, I don't know what Nampa and Caldwell are doing, I think they're 5 days a week.
Yeah.
But the ones around us, even on the Idaho side, Fruitland, Weiser, Parma, Newfoundland, Payette, they're all going 4 day, right? So one of the things I want to say is the worst way to make a decision is to do what everybody else is doing, right? We want to make sure we make a decision that's best for our community and our kids. But I was talking to one of, her name is Shell Robbins. She's the superintendent of Four Rivers Community School in Ontario, the charter school. And Annex, Steve Bishop, it's a K-8 school that actually is in Oregon that feeds into Weiser High School. So us 3, Nyssa, Annex, and Four Rivers are the only 3 schools in the county that are still on 5 day a week. And so Shell was saying, she said, I know that we have a recruiting concern. When people have said to us, if I can make the same amount of money working 4 days a week versus 5, why wouldn't I, right? So that's a competitive thing that obviously has been brought up in this. She said, we tried to solve it in a different way. And maybe it won't make a competitive edge, but at least we feel like we're still serving the interests of children and families, providing more or a similar amount of education rather than less, especially coming out of COVID, right? We saw that COVID, less instruction, what that did to our students' learning, and now we're proposing to continue that. Not a good idea, right? So she said what they did was have 5-day school week for the first 3 quarters, and then the last quarter they had a 4-day school week. That's kind of confusing, I get it, but it at least appealed to certain people toward the end of the year where people are kind of tired, winding down. It was a 4-day week. So contractually, I don't know what that looks like. It's probably complicated, but it was a creative solution actually suggested by one of the board members that they were planning on for next year.
So
it's different than all these.
So calendar number 2, that's just wording on there, honestly, because it says it's a 5-day, 1-week Thanksgiving break, but really it's not much different than a 4-day calendar.
Number 2?
Yeah. You know, when you look at some of the other calendars. So you could almost rebrand it with a different name, and people would go, yay, you did what we asked.
A lot of Fridays off, right?
I mean, really.
Well, I guess one of my concerns is, I mean, we talk about the benefits and who it's going to hurt and, you know, with the food safety and all of this. But everything that I've read, and I've read a lot, says, okay, these are the benefits of going to 4-day. But then almost everything that I read said, but it hurts the students. It might help with all these other things, might help you recruit, might help this, might help that, but it hurts the students. And I mean, isn't that what we're doing here? I mean, even Bobby said he first 5 days. I know we all prefer something different. I have some teachers here that I respect because I mean they were my teachers when I was in high school. And then some others, and all of the ones that I consider to be really good teachers say less days is not the answer. I mean, especially coming off of COVID, when all these kids are hurting. So, I mean, what's wrong with what we're doing now?
I know, and I just, like I said, I still worry about those little kids whose parents work at the sheds 12 hours and they're going to be left home alone. And Mrs. Ward, did you have some comments?
Oh, yeah, if I could comment. So I think I'm the only one here that's not on the committee or on the school board. I'm a parent. I will have 5 children in the school district starting this next coming school year. And I do appreciate all the work that the committee has done. I am a little concerned about the data that you are sharing on these surveys. I understand that Naomi did say that you guys went through and threw out if you saw multiple comments from the same family. I wasn't clear if that was on each of the 3 surveys. So I did all 3 surveys. And so did you throw out my data from whichever survey you chose? Or was that so my husband took the survey also, each except for the one at the basketball game. So I would just ask the board to really consider the source of the data. As you all know, you can skew data however you want to make whatever point you want. So I just ask that you really consider the data that's being presented to you. And as Mr. Peterson just shared, I think the most important thing when we make this decision moving forward is it about being able to attract teachers that only want to work 4 days, or is it about our students? So having 5 students in the classroom currently, I do have more children at home. I have children ranging from juniors in high school down to preschool right now. So I have quite a few years in education. I have been in quite a few school districts also with my children. We have been in Middleton School District, Ontario School District, the Fruitland School District, and now the Nyssa School District. Some of the things that drew us to the Nyssa School District are things that I think would attract teachers, which is the quality of the families in this community and your students. As a professional, I don't think it's realistic to expect to only work 4 days a week when you graduate from college. So I don't necessarily agree with sending students 4 days a week. My verdict is out on whether I'm pro 4-day or pro 5-day. Really, for my family, both schedules would be beneficial for different reasons. So I just would ask you to consider seriously the decision you're making and the ramifications it's going to have on your students moving forward, especially your students coming from two-parent working homes, your students that don't have that support at home. I have a third grader who has had a challenging year at school with teacher changes, and that's requiring a lot of extra work on my part as a parent to get her back up to speed to where she needs to be. And I can only imagine how much further she would have gone in her test scores by not only having a change in staffing mid-year, but decreasing to 3 days a week of school. That is significant. That will be significant on your top learners, your mid learners, and your learners that struggle. So I would just ask as a parent in the community to really do your research. I appreciate the data that was shared by this lady here. I don't know all of you, but to look at the data, go back and my question is, I've lived in the general community my whole life. Nyssa was a 4-day school week. Why did that change? What did the data trends show when Nyssa was a 4-day school week? I mean, I don't know. Things have changed a lot. Family demographics has changed since Nyssa was a 4-day school week. And those are things that we all need to recognize. I don't know, in a perfect world, we would be able to reach the majority of our parents. I personally don't feel like that has been done, that enough due diligence has been done to reach all of the parent demographics and help them understand. I found the surveys very confusing. I have a lot of experience in schools and wording of surveys, and I had to muddle through them. And so I just would say really consider the information that you're being given before you make this decision to move forward. But I trust that you guys will do what's best for our kids. I mean, we all want our kids to be successful. We want to have great staff. We need to have great staff. But also recognize that across the board, in all areas that have employees, they're struggling to find staff. And is the answer changing to a 4-day school week? I don't know. I'm not the one that has to make that hard decision. But I do appreciate being able to be here and to listen to what the board has started working on to try to make a decision for our district, to help us move forward and to help our kids be successful. So thank you.
Mr. David.
No, I wanted to share, I mentioned this in our committee meeting, and this is my personal opinion, so I don't speak for anybody other than myself. When I started coaching tennis, I took kids into the trophy case over there and said, find me a tennis trophy. Right? One didn't exist. Okay, so when we talked about when Nyssa moved from being a 4-day, which we were 4.5 day, if we walked over in the high school right now, and you look at the plaques on the wall for when we were a great school, top 100, right, best in the U.S. News, it was when we were 4.5 day. So when I tried to bring this up to some 4-dayers, is what I refer to them as, right, saying, I'm giving you research, I'm giving you data, I said, but we have our own numbers. This is my way of thinking. We have our numbers. We have what has worked for Nyssa. When we were at a 4.5 day, you go to the building right now, right, 06, 07, 08, 2009, 2010. We have plaques on the walls for those years, right? So all I think about, right, whether Coach Cleaver's doing the right thing or not, his numbers speak for themselves. Right, 50% for state championships in his year's coaching. When we're looking at Nyssa, what's best for Nyssa? Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? If we want to talk about what's best for Nyssa and what's for our community, we walk in the hallways and we look at the plaques on the wall and say we were a good school on a 4.5 day schedule. I don't know what all had to align. I was part of that. I was a student then, right? So I just know that's when we were good. And so I picked up our data. We have it. Right, in my mind.
And you know, parents still want to make appointments or go out of town. They could leave Friday at noon.
Bobby, when you were doing the 4-day, wasn't that a block schedule?
4.5. It was an 8-period day. It was an 8-period day, but on Fridays you would alternate. Teachers didn't like it. But just because I didn't like it, we were still good.
So one
Right.
Friday it was periods 1 through 4, the next Friday was 5 through 8.
Yep.
Advisory.
With an advisory. With an advisory.
When was it that we did the block schedule? Because there was a time.
It was before that.
Before Dawn Garden.
It was before Dawn Garden.
Dawn Garden. The year Dawn Garden came, we got rid of it.
Just throwing that out there in terms of like when we start thinking of the community, what we've done that works. We've done stuff.
Does anybody else have any comments they'd like to?
Did you guys look at a 4.5 day?
No, we didn't. We just did straight. I mean, because again, we already have 6 options. I mean, 2, now we're at 7 and 8. I mean, there are so many things.
Well,
you
there's
said.
some that we could throw out and maybe do a 4 day, a 5 day, and a 4.5 day to look at.
And I mean, and we can go back as well. I mean, it's, if you guys want to just do 3 options, a straight 5, a 4,
And a
a
4.5.
tutorial, 4.5. I mean, again,
I
it's,
think the 4 day weeks were the ones that were the top 3.
So would I'm just saying, would the 4.5 day offer breakfast and lunch and the numbers would get better?
For the kids that were there.
For the kids that were there, so those
The-
240 kids.
But 4.5, the half day isn't for everyone?
Mandatory.
But you know, if we offered some,
Used to be.
well, you know, some
Friday
fun
half day,
classes,
that's an option.
that might get more kids there.
You're talking half a day, right? You're talking half a day, what Bobby was talking about.
Yes, what Bobby's saying.
I think all the students were supposed to be there, they just split.
Correct.
They split the period.
My kids went through that and they did well.
And did they,
My wasn't.
My kids went.
I don't know, I think a 4.5 day would be. When do they leave, like when they go to Umatilla and stuff on a Friday?
10 a.m. the other day. So that would have been partway through their second period of a half
But
day.
they still would be there for part of it.
I know some of the parents that I spoke to regarding the survey, because they were overwhelmed with the excess of information, which is awesome, by the way. I appreciate that, but for some parents it was very overwhelming. They just simply went through, found the one that didn't have Fridays and said, that's the one I want, without even considering any other things. That's what they chose. I think had they looked more closely at the options for tutorial Fridays, they may have chose different. I don't know at this point whether there's a value in, like, at the next parent-teacher conference, make sure that every family sits down and does it, or at that point it's just too late and we just need to make the decision based off what we have. Because I feel like that there's some really good information and it goes really persuasive on both sides depending on what you believe is the value for the school. And so it's a hard decision to make. I don't know that more surveys will help, but maybe in the future trying to do it a little bit more, not guaranteed to get results, but just trying a little harder to get a wider range would be better, because a lot of people just clicked option 5.
Yeah, it was complicated, and that's no criticism at all of the committee. They did an amazing job, right? But it is a complicated issue, and you can't simplify it without, people have to see what they're choosing, so.
I talked to a lot of people that picked number 5, and I said, you want your kid getting out at 3:50? You go, what? No.
Yeah, because they didn't realize.
Yeah.
So I guess I want to say this to the school board and to whoever, right, that there are a lot of data points we have, right? We have the survey, the parent survey, the classified, the survey, not just the survey, but we have the comments. I don't know if any of you have taken time to read through the comments here that people are saying. Those are informative, right? It's a qualitative input, but it's important of the people who filled it out. It gives you some level of thinking of what they were thinking about. That's one data point, the survey plus the comments. Another data point would be, what does the research say about student learning on fewer days a week? Another data point would be, your own personal belief or experience with it, right? It's important to hear what many people have said. I appreciate Mrs. Ward standing and saying what she has said. There's a lot of data points for you to weigh, to consider, and one in your own mind may outweigh another, right? But more than anything, I just want our calendar committee to know how much I appreciate the time they've spent. I think we all do. I don't want to speak for the board, but we appreciate the work, the complexities. I know Mr. Hawkins has come through my office several times when the calendar committee's over. He's like, this is complicated, right? Well, I appreciate it.
And I think no matter what data you have or anything, you can always say, yeah, but, right? And our job was just to present it as such, right? I mean, and that's it, is, you know, we heard a lot of people say, well, a lot of people want this. What does that mean? You talk to 5, 10, 15, 100? That's only a third, right? I mean, and so you basically, you could just take it as it is, and I mean, again, put value in it or not, but you as a board make that decision. And so, and that's what I would honestly say. The data is what it is, and so make a decision on what you guys want to use.
I would like to point out to your board that the option number 4 was the second most popular option. It offered 14 tutorial Fridays, 17 no school at all on Fridays, and 4 full days of Fridays. No, and that was the second most popular option. So I also think that the schedule needs to be looked at if you're looking at adopting a 4 or even a 5-day schedule. The schedule needs to be looked at.
You mean the 8th grade day?
Yes.
Okay.
I really think it needs to be examined. You know, I
That's
think
something
you can learn more in a little bit longer time than what do we do, 46 minutes? I think you can learn more than in 46 minutes. I mean, you know, give a full 50, 55 is even better.
Mr. Cleaver and Mr. Jackman, I know, have done a lot of study about this, and neither one's here tonight because they're involved in other things. Actually, Mr. Jackman was sick today. But I know they would love to have that discussion at some point. That's not a community decision we make. Obviously, we want to know, but
that goes back to what Ryan said about we pick the calendar and then make it work. So
that's right.
So for next, you said you were hoping we could make a decision by next board meeting. So what does that look like? Does that look like us going home and reading all this research and choosing a favorite, or?
Just call me something.
And then we have to talk about it.
Well, and I know that the classified would like at a board meeting, you know, say something before you guys move it. But yeah, just, I mean,
they don't want to come tonight.
I think they could make tonight, but just during a board meeting, kind of the official, like, here's our stand.
Because it could, if we open it up to the public like we did last time, it could last all night just on that one topic. And nobody would be happy and people would be angry, and we don't want that.
No matter what we choose, somebody's
They're going to be mad.
Right.
Someone's going to be mad.
So we need to pick what we think is best for our community and have some support for it. This is why we feel it's best.
So I just wanted to know, Cindy, would the early Head Start be open on tutorial Fridays or not?
And that's the challenge is you know, we share a cook with the migrant Head Start or migrant preschool. So it would depend. Like if we don't have food services, we can't be open. Where I mean, in some ways that's a challenge, but in some ways it's a benefit or a challenge either way, honestly. So it all goes in the same thing. You know, our teachers could benefit from having extra planning time on Fridays, right? But then we're losing out. Those families are losing and trying to find childcare for those days. So yeah, which we know that there's nothing.
So my suggestion is that we go home and really spend some time doing some research, reading the articles, and come up with which one we like. And we could still modify it. Say I like this plan, but I'd like to modify it, and have some reasoning for your choice.
And we'll also have classified.
Listen to what they have to say. But it takes some time. I know it's asking a lot. It takes some time to read through this research and
And I
It's
know
only
the
40
committee-
pages.
Yeah.
There's lots of graphs.
The committee's gonna be really
Do you have it on
sad
cassettes like you do on?
Yeah.
not meeting on Wednesdays anymore, so if you do say we need more information on that, we're gonna be so happy we can meet on Wednesdays. every week. So-
Are you buying lunch that day?
Yes, I'm talking. So anyway, but no, but I want to put that out there as well, right? I mean, if you do say we want to see a 4.5 in that, I mean, the committee is committed to giving you guys the information you want, and so don't feel like it's a rush thing. If that's what you want us to do, we will do that.
I just have one more question for Gina. If we go to 4.5 and it's mandatory, how would that do the budget?
You two Ginas
So-
can't sit by each other.
I know.
With Gina.
You.
Okay, so if we were doing where it was mandatory for everybody to go, so we could do half, we could still do breakfast and lunch that day and serve students.
Even though the high school kids say we're done, I'm out of here.
Yes, yes. And so, I mean, the majority of them, like I said, are our elementary kids that are,
But that would not, we would not lose so much money.
yes, yeah.
And you would still hire people to,
Yeah, we would still have the same, I mean, we could probably, I don't know, figure out, I don't know how we would do it. Because we can't do one thing more
have them
or
make
less.
cookies for the next week.
Yeah, or something, and so I mean, we could have, half of it clean or something, but it always comes down to the reimbursement has to be enough to cover that wage, so that way we're not pulling from the general fund. And that's always what we're looking at, that's when I'm looking at all my budget, looking at my food.
And we'd still need bus drivers that day and assistants,
Yes,
so
and so
they wouldn't be losing out on money.
Yeah.
Is it possible for the committee to look at a 4.5-day week? Could we ask them to do
And have
that?
something like that ready in the next 2 weeks for a board meeting.
No pressure.
Or is that
So are
good
you
to
saying
do?
just a 4.5 day, or put the options again, where it's
Put the option.
Maybe a 5-day, a 4-day, and a 4.5 day.
Most popular 3-day or 4-day, most popular
5-day.
5-day,
That's right.
and then
A
versus a
4.5.
4.5.
And just show 3 options.
So if the most popular 4-day was the one that had no Fridays at all, that, we already know we don't want that, because
Yeah,
we
I
don't
don't
want
like
Friday,
that.
that's so.
I'd
we mix that
I
one.
say you take number 4. That's me personally. I say number 4 because it has tutorials at least,
Yeah.
and they don't get out at 3:50.
And just present those to us maybe, and
Right.
if there's any cost,
Yeah.
They
that
did
it would
They
cost,
did.
how much maybe it would cost the district. And in the meantime, we will all read through this information and see if we can. I don't know. Gina, food service Gina, could the high school kids, like if you had sack lunches in the foyer and they could grab one on their way out on a Friday tutorial?
We always, whatever we need to do to get food to the students, we can do it.
I mean,
As
wouldn't
long
that be
as they
a good
schedule school
idea?
day, we're good.
I'm just thinking, could there be an easier way to get lunches to the high schoolers before they head out?
They could just grab something
Yeah.
and have a
Yeah,
sandwich
we could
and
do sack lunches or something like that, I
a
mean,
piece of
so,
fruit or something.
yeah. So, I mean, that's always an option.
Because it's not cool to stay in the cafeteria.
Yes, it is not. That's why we got grab and go now, and we've got all our kids coming because of that. They want to grab it and go.
It's a good idea.
We could also kind of pass it up a little bit on Fridays, make it a draw.
What do you mean a draw?
I don't know, I think that's fun.
That's
Well, supposed to be present to win.
Music, something.
So what I'm just saying, if they could make every kid grab lunch on the way out, they could count every high school kid. Or middle school too. All right, any other comments before we move on? Yeah, at our next meeting, they will have 3 calendar or options for us, there are 3. And we will have done our research and.
Bathroom break.
Does anybody, do you want to take 5 minutes to go take a bathroom break?
I need to go to that.
Okay, 5 minutes. We'll reconvene at 7:25. I'm a teacher, so I can tell you how. Megan, did you give me this so we can like choose something and order it?
Just so you guys can start looking early.
Okay. So I was like, I'm not the signing thing?
No, it's just,
For Christmas?
March,
And I know
is certified, and they are, I think it's the second week. And
And do we have a budget?
on the front,
2,000.
for classified.
I think each person has to do that. Like,
But if we go on vacation.
But if we go over.
Well, I think she shot that high going last year. Well,
But okay, how many are at classified? 2,000, but I, you know, is it 10 or is there? By the way,
there was about, I think last year was like
What is that?
I've been meaning to contact you. I wonder
two marshmallows and stuff.
But this was.
We only have three major online.
My other two, not four now, yes.
Our design before have, I think seniors like numbers were 5 or 5 tests. So I'm happy on that. So I'll talk about that.
And if I see them more.
Okay, I legit.
So that you keep this.
This is $14. And that one's
So I just like to see yes, sir.
So you're editing.
I'm so sorry. I'm like, look at the carpet. Look at the carpet. I enjoy it.
Two weeks after the next one. Because I have my calendar right there. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So
I have one daughter. She's 7th grader.
Do we need him on? You said you keep him on Zoom, I have him ready. Do we need him on for it? It's totally up to you guys. Oh, I absolutely.
So I'm 27.
Yeah, so, but yeah, I just wanted to start it on time this year.
So it's 8,500, 60% of the income, right?
Well, our next board meeting, guys, can you listen from our next board meeting is on the 13th? And then if we do 2 weeks after that, on the 27th, it's just Darren's evaluation and executive session.
Well, I think if we think about how we did it last year, you guys say that he did three, and then we met to discuss the ratings, you compiled
So if everybody has theirs, actually meet, and then I think
You're saying not discussing tonight?
We get for 12 months.
Well, we can a little.
And so I was looking at asking.
I had a couple questions before I could make some of my final scorings, but most, I have it like 3/4 done, or just a few.
Mine's all done, but Pat
Well,
has
it's
to
at
start.
5,500 divided by 60.
Okay.
Yeah, actually,
And then-
I'm all done.
And so that's what it should be. It's-
So we can talk about it a little bit and
That should
maybe
just be
meet and discuss it and
60% of
And
the
what,
727.
Well,
Then 27?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
executive
no,
officer.
So, no,
Yeah.
see, that's
I
what.
know a lot of people have asked.
That's what I'm
I
wondering.
get it. It should be that 712,
Survey on-
and then 60% of the 712. I get what you're saying now.
Yeah,
I
so-
feel like, because I felt like there was
I didn't think it was.
People don't like it. Say we're not used to it.
Our teachers were not more. I mean, that's.
Yeah, no, but it's still always.
That's how I feel.
See the email that I sent you?
Because all we
Well,
got
and
was
he
company
could've-
really.
No, I get it.
I think I would be okay not doing a staff survey.
No, I get it, I get it.
I liked it, and I wouldn't want, because I like that better, so maybe we should ask.
I know, I sat back there because I don't have it. Have to look up there
So start with.
I just want that to be on your mind.
No, it's not in there.
Oh, okay.
I think that.
That's
Figure
the
that
first
out.
Nobody do
Anyway,
it yet.
if you guys
Okay.
want, or we think we're fine, and if we do need it.
Okay.
Do you guys
Well,
have
I'm glad you
questions?
got that.
Yeah.
No, I just asked Ryan all the questions.
And now if you're me.
Okay, it's time to reconvene. Potty break is
I'm
over.
on there now, so.
Okay, our next agenda item is My Tech High. Do we have a report from the admin on that, or?
We do. There was a lot of questions asked by one of our board members. I think a lot of you shared some of the questions there. Excuse me. We have prepared quite a little bit of information for you. Not just in the questions that were asked, but also just additional information. I've asked Crystal to come to present some of the financials for the board's information. Ryan has a lot of questions. I think we've invited Matt from High Tech High to.
He's available if you guys would like to be a part of the conversation, so, but it's up to you as a group. If, but he's ready to jump on if you guys would like to. If not, he's here as a resource if you want to.
Okay, so I think maybe let's just start with Crystal, if that's okay. You mind?
Sure.
Okay.
You're welcome to sit down.
Thank you. So last week, I sent you a very, very long email and it was overflowed with financials. So I guess I'll just go over that. It pretty much breaks down my Tech High, where we're at, where we could be at the end of the year. So I only reported in this email on fall semester. So everything up through December, whatever their last day of school was. So fall of 2022, we had 146 students in my Tech High. I did not break that down by school, I guess I could have done that, I'm sorry. So I want to explain revenue. Revenue for my Tech High students will come through our state school fund. State school fund is a very, very complicated formula that I wish I could just tell you this is what it is, but it doesn't work that way. So if you recall in our trainings about the state school fund, it's calculated based on our ADMW, which stands for average daily membership weighted. It also takes into consideration our district teacher experience, our local revenue we receive, and our transportation reimbursement rate. And if you don't know our transportation reimbursement rate, that is 70%. So ADMW is based off a formula that accounts for ADM are average daily membership regular, not weighted, students in ESL programs, students in pregnant and parenting programs, IEP students, students in poverty, foster care, and postgraduate scholars. ADMR is not a student count, it is more in depth. Average daily membership regular is calculated over the whole year and based on the number of days a student is enrolled. So then to make it even more complicated, this state doesn't just look at 1 year of your ADMW, they look at 2 fiscal years of your ADMW. And the state will pay you your state school fund based on the higher ADMW between those 2 years. So our current ADMW this year is 1,525.53. However, this number does not include my Tech High numbers currently. I did call the Director of Finance at ODE, Mr. Mike Phone, and he did confirm that the state will revise the state school fund in March of this year, 2023, and they will take into account our reported second period ADM numbers of this school year, which will change our ADMW. It will add in our My Tech High numbers, and it will adjust our state school fund payment. And so our payment will change in March of 2023. Unfortunately, the state school fund is not recalculated monthly or every time enrollment changes. It's revised once a year. So our revision is coming. Thus will change our revenue that's coming in. And then you'll see the change on the operating statement that I report every month. So with all that said, here is a breakdown of what our current numbers look like. So anticipated revenue right now, a little bit over $8,500 a student annually, about $712 per student per month. We've had My Tech High for 4 months, September, October, November, December. I did not look at last January's pilot program, I'm just doing fall. So that anticipated revenue is a little over $415,000. We have paid to My Tech High a total of $332,880. So that's $570 a student times 140 students times 4 months. That's how you get to that $332,000. And so for the year, if we keep 146 students in My Tech High, that'll be a little over $1.2 million in revenue. Due to My Tech High, that'll be a little over $748,000 for the year. And I have made a mistake on my calculations, so please make note of this. To the district will be $498,398 for 1 school year at 146 students. Sorry, I did not get that calculation right. So also in the email, I had attached our expenditure budget for My Tech High that was in our adopted fiscal year 23 budget. Our budget that we created that was adopted was only based off 100 students, and we're at 146. So it accounts for payment to My Tech High for their services. It accounts for payroll of 4% split 4 ways between the SIS, which is our student information specialist, our district executive admin, our payroll clerk, and our business manager for those additional duties associated with My Tech High. The budgeted payroll numbers include the district liabilities that I always talk about, which are PERS and our FICA and our Medicare, Social Security, workers' compensation, and unemployment that we pay. Another thing worth noting in our adopted fiscal 323 budget is that we did include an increase in our state school fund of about $850,000 to account for those 100 My Tech High students that we were budgeting for. So you've got the budget, what we were expecting, and then I'm trying to give you numbers of where we're at, and I know numbers are even higher for January. I'll let Brian talk on that. I've also been asked to provide some financial figures of various percentages for administrators. I just did from a 1% to a 5% I've listed out. Those numbers are just wages. They're not, they don't include the district's payroll liabilities like the PERS. So then I thought I'd better split that out for you guys as well. So I did a PERS tier 1-2 employee, and then a PERS tier 3 employee with what it would cost the district with those expenses. And just remember the difference between a PERS 1-2 tier and a PERS 3 is the amount, the PERS percentage rate that the district pays. Does that all make sense? Okay, and then
There was some question about our special education director. That is not budgeted in our online school budget. The funding used to pay our SPED director is coming from our SIA, our Student Investment Act, and then from our general fund special education budget. So just clarification there. And then I said, yep, that's a lot of information, so let me know what else you have, and I didn't hear from anyone, so please tell me what I've missed, what your questions are.
It says here the anticipated revenue, so are you saying that we haven't been paid by the state yet at all?
I'm telling you, our state school fund has not been recalculated.
Okay.
And so, yeah, our payments that we're getting do not include our MyTech.
Will they retro pay back?
So they'll adjust our payments, and then May of every year, they do a reconciliation payment.
So we'll get paid in May for this whole year.
Yeah, so they'll adjust our payment in March, and then they'll
So even though
reconcile everything
we're
in May.
paying out to My Tech High, we haven't actually received any income for this.
That's correct.
So what we're paying out comes out of our general fund.
In our budgeted online
Okay.
function to.
So we're anticipating almost $500,000 profit. And we have not decided where that money's going to go yet.
So everything is budgeted. So in our budget, in our adopted budget, we have budgeted 100 students. I presented a balanced budget, so that means all the revenue came in, I expended it somewhere, whether that's going into our contingency or pay our utilities. So our budget committee has adopted and approved and adopted My Tech High at 100 students. So, but we're setting higher.
So, yeah, so we did budget
We
to
budgeted
pay
for-
My Tech High.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So but we'll get a big check in May.
Is it possible not to?
Not unless we've been overpaid somewhere else. but-
So that brings up a question I have, is how is this deal that the governor just sent out going to affect us, where she said one of her goals is to oppose any effort to undermine public schools by providing taxpayer dollars to private schools in the name of school choice?
That's a private school.
But is My Tech High, does that not fall under this?
No.
Oh, good. Good.
Yeah, we're not charter or private, which is extremely important.
Yeah, that's important.
What
We
are
are not.
what is it classified as?
It's a public online school.
Thank you, Jacoby.
So are we gonna have to decide in May what to do with that money?
You need to decide anything about that.
No,
At some
okay.
point you will, yeah.
Wait, when
Tell me
I
about that,
present the budget, we'll go over it with, higher numbers if we're even moving forward. You guys are here to discuss the contract and whether or not we're gonna move forward and continue this. So I just want you guys to know financials, where we're sitting.
So what do we pay out of the monies, the $498,398? We have to pay that's what Ms. Burbank is paid.
No, she's contracted with My Tech High.
She's contracted with My Tech.
So, I guess a question I have too, that, it's kind of off the side of this, but it's my understanding we're still doing Baker Academy. Why?
We started doing Baker Web before we started this to capture our students who were leaving us during COVID. And so,
Are we gonna continue to do Baker Web?
we
if
don't,
continue
Ryan and
to
I
do-
talked, we're not gonna continue that in the next year, just because it kind of conflicts
Not
with what
cost
we're doing. It's not, no, it's been fine, but it just hasn't been cost effective for us at this point. It was during COVID, it was, because I think we pulled back 24 students. And it was really a financial boon to the district that way, because they were leaving us, and we were gonna miss that 8,500 plus, right? But by the, multiply that by 24, and that's what we did by creating that partnership. And of course, there's a fee for that. It was less than $3,000 per student. So anyway.
Okay.
You
Sorry,
know,
side note.
as I recall, we've lost like 40 or 41 students who transferred from our school to like Adrian or Vale because they were unhappy with certain things. That's a lot of money. Have we gotten any of those students back? Have we recruited our own kids?
We have worked on that to a degree, and I don't know how to do that other than to just say, hey, we miss you, because for various reasons people go out there. I don't want to point anybody out. I don't know everybody, but some left over COVID protest. I know that because they thought that Adrian wasn't gonna make more masks. Have they come back? I don't think so. Some yes, some no. Some like the smaller school. Some like a smaller school setting. Some had conflicts here and this and
But there are others that leave that don't have a conflict. Maybe they just leave because they moved.
correct.
So
Well,
that's not anything that we could have stopped. It was their own life situation that
No,
caused
but
them
there
to
was
move.
this huge jump.
but I think Megan handed out Megan had given us.
At that time, yes.
Yeah, and so that's what I'm asking. Have we tried to recruit those students back?
We are actually receiving, we're in the plus, I don't know what percentage, what number of plus we are from Ontario that are coming here versus those we've lost. So, I haven't seen, I haven't looked at that paper lately, I know you provided it to us.
You guys still have access to that inter-district form. It's shared with you, so you can access it. You just search it in Google sheet. You really haven't. Kids that have gone to Adrian are going to continue to go to Adrian. They've never been here. We did lose some, but I think that eventually they have family members over there that eventually they would have gone for families. It's really not.
We've gained about as many as we've lost.
Yes.
We're plus on that.
Yeah.
I think it's also noteworthy for Jacoby to say how many students are enrolled right now in My Tech High, because it has gone up from 146.
We're currently sitting at 170 students with 4 pending inter-district transfers.
Correct. And that's a very important point Jacoby makes there. So we are not a charter school, we're not a private school, we're a public, what's that?
Online option.
Online option, online offering. We're the only one in the state that is doing it by statute. And ORS requires us to have an inter-district transfer, which I spent much of my summer, and Ryan a lot too, explaining to superintendents and school districts what was happening, because Portland Public or Eugene or Medford or whoever were wondering, like, I'm signing an inter-district agreement. If I'm from Portland, I would sign an inter-district agreement for a kid to go to Beaverton or to wherever, Barlow, but not Nyssa, 9 hours away. And so they couldn't figure out, we had to work with ODE. We met with ODE several times, several people there to say, this is the ORS, explain in the emails, on the phones, with those school districts, how this was working, because a lot of these schools have created their own online schools, like Portland Public, Eugene. A lot of them have an online option, so they don't lose their kids to online schools elsewhere. But we are the first to create an online school to keep our own kids and to recruit others. And so I think the state is watching us, as you know, and rightly so, because it's new. We're following the statutes and in full knowledge of ODE. We're trying to do what's right. We've been informed that we have to be careful on our poverty count, because that could affect our lunch count, and that could also affect our Title I-A status at our elementary school. So we're having to be careful with that. New things that we've just recently discovered through meetings with ODE. But anyway, so we're trying to be careful and navigate this to make sure we're not endangering any services and situations here with our students in person.
Do we have a breakdown of which the numbers in elementary, middle, high school?
Somewhere. I don't know.
I should have brought it.
There are currently 25 students in high school. I would say we have another, after that it's pretty evenly split between middle and elementary, more so in the elementary.
Right, I would like you to talk about high school going forward.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, next year we're only, the proposition is K-8 only.
Well, why is that if we've got 25 kids in there?
So right now, it just with the lower numbers, what it is having licensed teachers in Oregon. They're having an issue because basically the ones in Utah have to be dual licensed for that, and just for the small number, they don't know how many are going to attend next year. It's not worth it really for them to offer that and find that.
So this is my text call.
No, we both talked about it and saying, especially like looking at what we're trying to, the high school having guidance counselor, redo all the course catalogs, all of those things that it would be easier kind of going forward just to do a K-8. And then when we do have a larger group, Matt and I were talking about, like 8th graders, we see, hey, now we have 40, 50 kids jumping up in 9th grade. We can start building it 9th grade up. And so, anyway, it was put out there, and I said, yeah, it sounds logical to me. So.
Well, I know that Mrs. Marnock, you had said something about, well, you've reiterated many times about having Tom Whaley used to do a computer sciences course here that we felt was very powerful for our kids here. But it's hard to find people like that. Well, my tech high had a person like that, but I don't know what it was a kind of a CTE course, but he didn't have the right licensure or experience level for TSBC to approve it. So it was kind of a bummer for the kids that wanted to take that, but couldn't because of that licensure issue. So I think that instead of continuing to recruit kids who won't end up being able to take the classes they want, we're going to try to build it from 8th grade that way into the high school. So.
One of the original concerns I remember was the drain on the existing resources of the staff members who will be involved. And as I'm looking here at $500,000 of, to me, essentially free money because I didn't have a thing to do with it. I'm wondering for you guys who are in the program and leading it and directing it, has this been a drain on your personal day? Is this something that you feel like is interfering with your ability to take care of Nyssa School District?
Not at all, though it is a lot of work. I'm putting about 4 hours a day extra in my tech high on top of what else I'm doing. Though I will say I don't really have a life and I have really bad anxiety, so taking work home is kind of really nice for me.
So when we first started this, I have to go back to what I said originally, and this is me personally, is that I'd be for this if we found its own administration, basically, somebody to run this. Have we looked into that at all? Is this something that?
We haven't, that's a good question, and I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm done.
But I think at some point, we do need to look at that. I don't know what the numbers would be, where Ryan and I, we haven't really discussed a threshold of what that would look like, but yeah, at some point we do need to have an administrator dedicated to this, because it has been a burden on us. It's been a burden on Jacoby, I would say, Crystal and Christy to a degree, Megan as well, fielding phone calls and additional budgetary guidelines. And so, yeah, at some point.
How many people would it take? Like, Jacoby knows this thing. He's been doing all the applications or whatever. Put him and one other person in there? I'm saying if that's something you want to do.
No, it really is.
Like 2 people could run it?
Absolutely. Full time.
So.
I mean, I'm doing it both.
Right.
Like the student information side, I'm doing 2 right now myself. So I mean, it definitely is 2-person.
I think we've thrown around ideas about that structure and how to maximize that, right? I mean, if you do have an administrator and somebody to register that maybe they dual with an alternative school with 10 or 15 kids here, right? I mean, so just kind of maximizing out. We've talked about different structures, but that's something we're really looking forward to because, I mean, as we continue to grow, we thought we were going to get 100 or 176. Or 176, I think. 170. Sorry. And that's projected to continue to grow and go up, especially if we make the commitment. They're going to build out our website. They're going to get more information. And so it's only going to increase. And so anyway, that's what we're discussing is like, this could be a great opportunity, kind of 2 birds, 1 stone. So.
Because we have, this may be preliminary, you mentioned it, we have discussed an alternative school, trying to figure out how to capture our students who are not fitting into our traditional high school. Online may not work for them either, but they just need an option. Right now, we're kind of, getting those students in our in Martha Lasso's class. But if they've been expelled, that doesn't really work either. For whatever reason, we're trying to figure out how to serve some students. That's not a ton of students, but there are some that we're. So, could you have both? That's what we're trying to consider.
How many students are you talking about? Just the ballpark.
For the alternative school. Well, if you look at our dropout rate or our not graduation rate, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the numbers there. I don't want to say anything incorrect, but there are a substantial number of students, every year who are falling short And it's not just seniors, you have freshmen and sophomores sometimes who are not on track to graduate. They
And we used to have an alternative school.
What happened to that?
I don't know. What
Isn't it
happened
countywide?
while I was gone, it used to be the ESD running it, and it was for Ontario and Vail students in Adrian. Ryan and I have talked about a lot of purchasing a building to have it close to campus. The old US Bank has crossed our minds. Of course, we'd love to have that as an alternative school or whatever. That's a throwing it out. Yeah, right.
You were saying.
But anyway, just thoughts, right? I'm not saying that's what we want to do, but we are trying to figure out how we can, our graduation rate, that's an important number across the state to say, hey, how are we serving kids? How are we keeping them on track to a productive life, that they're not just, when we expel them or they drop out for whatever reason, what are their options? Sometimes it's, the only option we have right now is online, and that doesn't work either. So sometimes kids need to come every day. They need a person to be there for them. So that's really different than the My Tech High, but is that a person that could run both? I don't know. We're considering several of those options.
Well, that takes an administrator.
It does.
Someone
That would be a
with
full-time.
administrative certification. But also, if that person doesn't have enough to do, we need a grant writer. And I'm not putting any onus on the two of you, but grants are out and they're coming due.
Yeah.
It's free money.
So tonight, the contract is here, and we have to decide whether we want to go on my second or.
It's a study session.
I mean, it's just a work session.
Right.
There's no voting.
Right, no voting, but I really truly think that this is something that's good for the district. I think that there may still be some little kinks here and there to work out, but frankly, it sounds like that it's manageable from our current staff. It's bringing in a significant amount of money that we are able to use without strings attached. It's not like ESSER funds where we were told that we have to use it for certain things. I think this is a win, personally. And I do, again, want to acknowledge that Brian and Darren have forfeited their, not salary, but whatever the payroll is that they would have gotten this year. That's pretty awesome, you guys. You guys are building this from the ground up, brand new, putting in some work, and your efforts, I hope that the board at some point will decide to reimburse you for some of that cost that you should have been due, in my opinion.
My comment is that I still have some questions about My Tech High, and I do not really think that I want to go for an extended contract with them. There are just a few little things. I am a little bit uncomfortable with some of their curricula. And there are a lot of questions that you asked, Megan, that I would like to have answered, how many qualified teachers.
So we vote at the board meeting on a contract for how many years?
They had suggested 5, is that right?
Will they
And I think that's
negotiate
way
with us
too
on
much.
that like they did before?
3 years?
Possibly, they want a good commitment, but yeah, I mean, it's just, it's contract work, right? It's all negotiations, and I mean, if that's what you guys say, 3, 5, 20, I don't know.
We'll ask.
And I forget, what did they say the new cut was? Because we were 60/40.
It's still 60/40, and then after it's at 3% a year. It's not, so it's a 3% increase, but so it's not 63, 66, right? It's 3% of that 60, so we're going to pay 588 plus 3% or 570, and
So at the end of 5 years, you're up to 15%.
No, because it doesn't work that way. 'Cause it's 3% of the 570, and then 3% of it's 574, right? So it's not compounding.
So it's 3% every year.
15%?
Of whatever's.
But it's not 15% though.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, so
Yeah.
that's what I'm asking, it's 3% of whatever our 40% is every year? I didn't quite understand that 3%.
It's a good question.
Yeah. And so
Can you
yeah,
get
that's what it
that?
would be. So out of that 580, you just multiply, you added 3% in that. The next year you would have 3% of that.
So,
yeah.
so why don't they just say they get 63%?
For 75.
Yeah.
Because that's
65 years.
The first year, yeah, it works that way. Then it's not 66%.
so it's 63% every year.
I get what
I'm
you're
trying to
saying, but
understand
You get what I'm
this.
saying? Yeah, yeah. It's creative math, and Pat and I were talking a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's a lot of creative math.
Creative math.
Yeah, and I'm still working on that creative math right now in my head.
Well, we need to write it out. So
Yeah.
we can-
And then maybe that's up to meeting and stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, it makes me unhappy when it's not exact.
Well, but we can just crunch those numbers that way. Crystal's not here, so it would be helpful to have her.
Yeah, I mean, is there a cap? Or if we keep going for 20 years, all of a sudden we're only making 20%?
See, it's different because you're not doing a percentage of, so 64, but basically it's a 580, right? We actually make more than $8,500 per student, right? So we're already off a little bit, but we will get an increase, hopefully, in the average ADM, right, of those students. And they're just taking, instead of doing 60%, we just started at that 570, and now we're adding 3%. If we add, who knows, legislative meeting now, if they add 10% per student, it's not adding 10% to them. They get that 570 and 3%.
Can you guarantee that though?
But that's what's in there. It says it very clearly that 580 increased by 3%
It's
every year.
570.
Or 570, sorry. They increased it
$10
by
makes a lot of difference to me.
Yeah. And so, but that's the difference, but also, it also swings the other way. Right? If something happens and you look at, I don't know, now instead of 8,500, it's 8,200. Guess what? They're still making the 63%. And so, so it's that kind of give and take on that. So.
I believe the new governor of Oregon has until February 1st to give her recommendations on the budget, state school fund budget.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. So,
I think I've just been in meetings where they've said current budget to serve current service levels across the state need to be at about $10.5 billion budget.
Last biennium was 9.3.
Or 9.3 right now.
Yeah.
I don't know, we're showing up.
Wow.
So again, you guys can just say 60% in there. We just like the 60%, no matter how much more it is. Like I said, the increase could go up 10% of what it was because we're saying it's 60%. But if you're just more comfortable saying with that, then that's okay as well. It's up to negotiation. So.
Can we look at this list of questions that were presented about
I just passed.
teachers and?
Yeah, I just asked that an answer to the others.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Thanks for leading into that.
Yes.
And those are some answers there. We worked with my tech high on these, mostly him, in areas that were his, right?
So if we're just doing K through 8, they won't graduate from Nyssa.
Correct. Well, unless those 8th graders that we have starting next year are like, and that may be something to talk about. I don't know how many 8th graders this year who are saying, hey, I want to.
We're just going to put a K8 until we get everything kind of built out better. So.
Is that going to reflect badly on a non-completion rate or anything for the district?
That's a good question, but no, not right now.
It will just fluctuate our enrollment count for the following year.
And I guess the type of student that's in my tech high that's like in high school right now, those parents are going to find another school for them. They're not like the type of kid who's going to drop out and count against us for a dropout.
They will find. There are a lot of options.
Oh, as long as they re-enroll somewhere else, it doesn't?
Yeah.
Correct.
Oh, yeah. They will find Baker Web, they'll find Stevens River, they'll find somewhere.
Okay.
So they just find another online.
I can't leave that one out.
They're just not that type of student.
Do you think it would hurt us though if people start looking, well, here's my tech high, but it only goes K through 8, but here's another one that goes K through 12, and I just want to stick with this one.
That may. Good.
I think with the courses that they are offering and the classes and things that they're doing, I don't think you may, but it may be just a few. I mean, the kids really like it, the parents really like it because of the things that their kids are doing, and so I don't think you're gonna lose it.
And really, it's almost like the Four Rivers approach, right? They didn't initially have a high school. They just kind of rolled them over, and now it's becoming more and more popular for students.
Right, as the program grows.
I do have a question about attendance. It's saying that the parent marks attendance for the week through the system. That isn't meeting Oregon's requirement for online learning.
Nyssa staff have full access to monitoring all student parent progress in real time and track attendance. So, yeah, the teachers are monitoring that. Those
But they're supposed to have direct contact with a instructor.
And they do, I talked to Kathleen about that today, right? That's part of their Thursday, at least check-in, and they have to physically write in every week, three things that they did. But she checks in on the progress every week, and they have the assignment they have to do, and so that's their attendance check-in.
From the remote advisory committee, understanding of attendance is it's daily contact with a teacher.
Okay.
So I just was curious
Which
how.
one, where are you?
So that's where they're doing currently.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're doing the attendance according to what ODE is.
Yes, because we do need to be in that compliance with that.
And then when they talk about every modality of education is available, are there like set class times that students can meet with a teacher? Or is it more one-on-one?
Or
On the second page, sorry. Above special populations.
Gee, I don't know. You're talking about special population?
No, above special
Above that,
populations.
okay, got you.
So I was just curious what it would look like for a typical student in my tech high for the day. I guess that's more what I want to,
Yeah.
like their options.
I don't know that answer. That's a good question.
The students currently have a schedule 1 through 6, and it's my understanding that they have the opportunity, they work at their own pace, and then have the opportunity to do a check-in with each of their teachers to monitor progress and see how they're doing, so it's self-paced.
And they say that their turnaround for communication with students help. I mean, obviously, what they say within that day, but less than 24 hours is their number on it. And so that's kind of what they, if a student does need that help, they're pretty good at getting to us.
And I think they have a choice in the different curriculum that they are using with each of the students. It seems like when I've talked to them, the special ed students in particular, that they've used some online options along with some curriculum that they've purchased, like to use from the home setting as well. So yeah, they have different options for what their needs are.
So Jacoby, you do maintain, you do track their grades.
Yes. Yes, so I have their schedule, and my tech high reports me their grades at the semester, each semester. I then go in and apply that class that they've passed to our course that we have that's matched in the system, their credit for that course, so each semester they're 0.5. And that gets put into their student course history, which goes towards their diploma. All that's tracked, and I have access to that. We work on schedules, all of that, running enrollment, all of that.
Are there, I don't know if this was asked on there, but are there students, oh, it says, do we have students on IEPs? Do we have students that are on a different learning course, and are we able to provide for them?
Yeah, right now I'm their case manager. And so currently we have 3 that have an active IEP and eligibility. And so I'm just doing Zoom meetings and check-ins with them that way, or if they have any questions, they email me. And the 3 that I have right now, they're all elementary, and so their parents are usually the ones that email me or anything. But then I log in and meet with them on a weekly basis. So great, yeah. I do have some others that we're still working on reactivating their IEPs or finding. We're struggling to find online evaluations for to get them tested so that I can get their reevals done, or because they come in with expired. A lot of them have come in with expired IEPs or expired eligibilities, and so we have to reactivate and reeval those kiddos. And we're struggling to find the resources for that. I did meet with somebody earlier, or at the end of what is today? It's Monday, so last week, and talked about some different options. Right now they're working with My Tech High in Utah, and so they're trying to get their psychologists certified so that they can work in Oregon too. And so, we're working on some of those options that might expand some of our population for next year.
Do you have a question, Wendy?
Yes, I know we heard from Mr. Hunter a couple weeks ago about the testing and iReady. Do My Tech High students go into that where you can see how they align with their peers that are in classroom settings? Are they doing any type of standardized testing or anything or screening? I don't know, evaluations?
I will say that they do have iReady and some other things on there that those kids do use as well, but it's my understanding they are all opt out of state standardized testing.
Yeah, and they do have that option for it though, but all of them right now have opted out. So that's what is going to be our comparable to, but they've opted out. We haven't, because the iReady comes with a diagnostic that is on top of that. If hey, we like a diagnostic and actually help a little better in replacement, and so, but currently we don't have anything to kind of measure apples to apples on it.
Jacoby, the high school kids that we have enrolled, are any going to graduate this year?
I am still going through and putting in all of their information into their student course history. I have to do all of this by hand. And so will any of them graduate this year, you said? Mm-hmm. No. No, and that's because we only have, I don't think we have a single senior. And so that would be like, I'll have to go back and double check just to be sure I'm getting the most accurate information.
As a whole, how are they doing academically?
Every single student has passed. We've had one not pass, but that is because they withdrew early.
They went through what?
They withdrew early. There was an actual physical spot open at a charter school that they were wanting to get into, so they left and they have come back this semester. It wasn't for them. So, all 14 kids that we had in that pilot program at the beginning of the year have returned.
Any other questions? So we will have to make a decision at the next day.
Yeah.
And you'll have some options on 3 years, 2 years, 5 years.
Yeah, and oh gosh, I forgot when we had in the back here. I was actually, I asked her to help us with. We understand it's confusing. What would be better for parents, and so we just have to see if we can kind of put the 4, 4.5, if we needed a better decibel for parents. And so I will be working through that.
You're talking about calendar.
No,
I think she was talking about contract.
4, 4.5.
Like ask them if we can have like a 3 year.
I was kind of agreeing with you.
I'm sorry.
We've been talking about my text.
Yes.
Just a 5-year contract to me sounds pretty scary. I don't know about you guys.
Just ask.
I can ask Matt tomorrow if he's interested in it, and also things like just putting 60% and not 100% in there. And broken 6% broken down to 9-month increments. And so anyway, so I will ask him then. Sorry, I was.
And have that information for us.
My brain was on calendar. How am I going to get this done in 2 weeks?
If you email that to us so we can make it.
Yeah.
Use that in our decision.
Definitely a smaller, shorter contract.
Yeah.
I still have some.
But one concern with that, I'm sorry, I interrupted you, go ahead.
No, I still have some apprehension about my tech high.
Other
So
than that? Other than the length of our contract term?
the length of the contract, there's certain things, I just need to reread the contract and do a little more searching. But, yeah, and I do have a concern about the length of the contract.
So my concern is actually the opposite, and that is I'm worried that if we say, well, sorry, we only want to do 3 years, and they say, look, you guys are the guinea pig in Oregon, we want to get this going, and then they'll say, we're going to go find somebody else who's willing to do a 5-year. It's possible that they can back out on us.
Well, but it wouldn't hurt to ask. We don't have to say we're only going to sign a 3-year, but we can ask.
Yeah. See if it's possible, but certainly don't dig our heels in too hard.
Yeah. And I can say, 5, 3, meet in the middle, or, I will bring up everything in that, because basically, that's what you guys want, and then we can kind of go from there. I'll feel him out, so.
Well, and to answer your question, we're in the business of educating students, not in the business of making money. So, that's part of my thinking when it comes to my tech high.
And I just was curious, where did the interest to go into my tech high come from? I'm sorry, I wasn't aware of this. But was it because of how did COVID kind of spring this up? Or, I'm just curious.
I think initially it came because we started seeing a need for online offerings. Excuse me, we had some of our own students who were weren't interested in coming back. It wasn't a large number, but it was enough. And we also saw that I was a long time, I guess, skeptic, not opponent, but a skeptic of online schools. I just thought, I always believed that in-person was always best. But that was me, right? That's my own preference. But the fact is, whatever works for me doesn't always work for everybody else. And there are families and students across the state who are looking for good options and for online offerings, and COVID opened my eyes to that and the need to, I guess the other thing that kind of concerned me was a way to preserve Nyssa's long-term financial stability for our community here, our students, our community. As a superintendent, I look at the aging infrastructure, and it's come up, in the time that, you and I, you've been here a little longer than me. And,
about 3 months.
Right. But the whole time, we've had quite a few infrastructure issues happen. Aging buildings, we have our HVAC project that we're going to get going. We had, I can't even think of the name of that thing, it was $300,000 or $400,000.
The refrigerator.
The cooling tower, yeah. The track, the tennis courts. I shouldn't even bring up the tennis courts at this place. But just, trying to figure out how to take care of our employees.
It's like a win-win.
Yeah, I felt like it's a win-win. Now, do I know everything that could happen? I'm not trying to mislead the school board in saying that things come up about my tech high that I have to then navigate and say, I didn't realize that it might affect our lunch count, depending on the poverty count of the students online, right? If they are high enough, that would affect lunch, that would also affect time of day. So I just really recently learned that from ODE a month or so ago. And so we want to make sure that we are in compliance and we're not harming our population here, but we're also doing right by people who are enrolling here. And I'm looking at Megan, she's an online instructor. She asks really awesome questions because the entity you work for has done this for a long time. So that is how it began.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? So we'll vote on the extension or not of the contract at February meeting.
Yes.
In just a moment, we will be going into executive session to review and evaluate the performance of the superintendent. Or any other public officer, employee, or staff member, unless that person requests an open hearing. It's ORS 192.660. So we will adjourn this meeting and go into executive meeting. we have 5 days.
Thank you all.
Thank you guys for coming to our request.
Walking off the camera.
What's on with the tennis courts?
So,
Bobby,
to stand up.
what's wrong with the tennis courts? Well, didn't we just have them fixed?
No, we just fixed the
Just pull that button in the back.
Tell us.